know when you're recording.
We're recording.
We're recording. And Sally, are you ready?
I'm ready.
John, are you ready?
You bet.
Hi, I'm Jim Eskin, and on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Nonprofit Empowerment Webinar Series. This is the 14th webinar. I'm really excited about our topic and our subject matter expert. This is on nonprofit staffing solutions. Sally, I am guilty of some things. I repeat favorite things. This quote to me just summarizes so much the situation we're in. It's from, and John F. Kennedy, I have to admit, was one of my heroes growing up. And this was part of his commencement address at American University on June 10th, 1963. And it gives me goosebumps because every time I see it, I think he's talking to us right now, this day. He goes, the most basic common link is that we all inhabit the small planet, we all breathe the same air, and we all cherish our children's future. And we are all mortal. I think he's just talking to us right now. Before we go any further, I want to introduce our producer, John Largent, who's CEO of Game Day Media. John makes all the technological worries go away. And he's just going to take a minute to share some of the logistics, particularly how you can type in questions and comments.
Hi, everyone. If you want to ask questions, and we encourage you to ask questions, do that in the chat box. It's either at the bottom if you're on your laptop or on the top of your screen if you're using an iPad. And we'll get to those in the order that they were received. You may experience some delay or lag in your transmission, but we hope that that's a minimum, and we thank you for being here today.
And I'm going to give her a fuller introduction, but I am just thrilled to have as our subject matter expert on all issues human capital wise, our good friend. She's partnered with me before, Sally Bryant. Sally office is in Dallas, but I think today she's in Wichita. So I'm going to start with two informal questions, Sally. Number one, how is the Bryant family doing?
We are doing very well, thank you. Everyone is healthy, and so very good, thank you.
And the second question, you know, you're ahead of me. I don't know that many people have traveled. Okay, you've been traveling. What's that been like?
It's been interesting. So before COVID, I was on an airplane, weekly or every other week, probably every other week. And so I was home for 10 weeks, which was very unusual, but I started traveling again May 31st. This is my third trip, and the planes are actually surprisingly full. And the airports are surprisingly, like, all the shops are closed down. So it's a little bit, that's a little bit frustrating, but really overall, it's not that different, except that you need to wear a mask and be careful.
Well, Sally, we have a feeling, I'm sure you share, when our nation or our world's nonprofits do well, we all do well. And I just want to tell you, I don't know any firm other than the Bryant Group that Sally's the president and CEO that has been doing a longer or better job of placing advancement professions. It's almost embarrassing. I can name a city and she can name someone they've placed there. So she has a special relationship. And I think, Sally, our learning community of attendees is made up of CEOs, of executive directors, of board chairs, board members, other staff, volunteers, and donors. And we know that the nonprofit sector is special for one reason. It's the passion. I don't care what your cause is. I don't care what your position is. You believe deeply in that cause, and that's your superpower, to help you just work harder, work more creatively, work more productively. And we need your passion more than ever. By the way, there are 1.5 million nonprofits in the country, 1.5 million. Probably half of them are the clients of the Bryant Group. And it's a great, and by the way, nonprofits are no stranger to financial pressures. Every CEO and executive director and board chair I know has been juggling budgets for a long time. But we're facing a real dilemma now, because at the precise time that the resources are being challenged available to nonprofits from both government and philanthropy, the needs for what you're doing are rising. And so we got to make the very, very best use of people. I used to like to say that nonprofits were experts in stretching nickels into dimes, and I've changed that. Now they're stretching those nickels into quarters. But again, whatever your cause is, you were essential before COVID, and now our friends are more essential than ever in the nonprofit sector. And we have a little mantra that we introduced in week 2, and we like to say that we are nonprofit strong. So I'd like all the attendees, if they could, to type in those words, nonprofit strong. And I'd like to ask Sally, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
Right answers, Sally. And just a little background, Andrea and I launched Eskin fundraising training back on June 1st, 2018. And we love what we're doing here. In my higher education advancement career, I had the privilege of working with very accomplished business and community leaders who were absolutely fearless about everything they had to do in their lives, with one exception, asking for a gift. And most of fear is based on fear of the unknown. And so our job is to demystify what I call the art and science of fundraising. We put out a monthly newsletter. And by the way, we're going to be posting the recording and slides of this after the show. First, we're going to put a short summary on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then we're going to post the recording and slides on LinkedIn and Facebook. And if you're not in my database, you can click where it says click there, and we will enter you that. And not only will, and by the way, I was very proud to publish my first book last year, trying to think, I think fundraising, it's not easy, but it is based on common sense, and it can be simple. And I like to say that anybody with a knowing head and an honest heart can do it. I'm very thrilled to have Sally. We have a great lineup of webinars scheduled. And so we hope you'll continue to be part of our robust learning community. Sally, you were one of our live workshops, though you were connected by a competitor of Zoom, Skype. We like to say whether we're gathering people in person or through digital space, cyberspace, that we are a learning community. And I dare say, you know a lot, I know something, that our audience knows a lot. And between us, we comprise a learning community that can answer almost any question. We like to say in the art and science of fundraising, there are 4 distinct parts. The first is identifying who you're going to ask. The second is forging a personal and emotional bond between the prospect and your nonprofit. The third is obvious, and that's the who, what, and where, how, and for what we're going to ask. And then we close the loop by acknowledging and thanking the donor, because we're going to come back to Sally next year and ask her to continue her gift and maybe even increase it. So now we'd always love to get a little direction from our attendees. We're going to run an informal poll. And if type in what you want: discovery, cultivation, solicitation, or stewardship. Type in. We're going to give you, I think, a whole 10 seconds to vote, and then we'll see. And by the way, Sally, it's been interesting. We've been getting different responses on almost all the different webinars. Okay, John, are we getting responses? Okay, and it looks like they want to know about discovery, identifying who to ask. I think it's the first time, Sally, I don't know if it's you, this first time they've made that their favorite. And we have one more question for you. Are fundraisers more A, born, or B, made? So type in A if you think they're born, type in B if they're made. And this will be our last poll. And that's the answer I want, because there's more for ESCN fundraising training to do when you think they're not born, but they're made. And I go back to the Jeffersonian virtues of a knowing head and an honest heart. We can take anybody who's passionate about their cause, who's willing to learn and brings a knowing head and an honest heart. We'll make you a good fundraiser. And we like to point out that, you know, money is not the end. It's only the means to the end. And by the way, philanthropy is both the giving of time and money to make life better for other people. Okay, at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our special guest. Sally Bryant is the president and CEO of the Bryant Group. And this is a firm that's been specializing in recruiting advancement professionals longer than anyone else. I believe you all started in 1988. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And also, by the way, if you all remember, I believe there was a movie called The Firm starring Tom Cruise about 10 or 15 years ago. And it was about nobody could leave there. Well, I don't know what the analogy I'm making, but Bryant Group has an amazing placement and retention record, that they have a 5.5-year average of placement retention, which I don't know the latest statistics, but I think that's at least 3 times the average placement. They just somehow, when they place a person, they stick. Sally joined the Bryant Group in the year 2007, and I'm not going to go through the details of all her bio, but she brings a good 30 years of experience in advancement management, consulting, recruiting, as well as achievements from the corporate sales arena and in other entrepreneurial activities. She's headquartered in Dallas, but she's one of those brave people that's been traveling. So I believe you're in Wichita, Kansas today. What's the temperature there?
It was 97 last time I checked.
Well, that's even warmer than San Antonio. Okay, folks, this is how we're going to unfold the program. We have 15 questions that's going to comprise the dialogue between Sally and myself. And we expect her to go at a pretty rapid pace, but some questions require longer answers than others. But please, if you have any questions as the discussion proceeds, type them into the chat space, because we're going to see where we are roughly around 3:40, and then we'll move to some of your questions. So Sally, you ready for the Q&A part?
I am, and I do want to thank you so much for having me today, Jim. I want to acknowledge that this is a hard topic, and I appreciate not only that you're willing to take it on, but that you trust me to take it on with you.
Well, good. It's thrilled. We're going to do more of this.
Oh,
Okay,
and
here's the first question. And Sally, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to give a shout out to my fabulous client here in Wichita. I am in their conference room of Envision Incorporated that serves, this organization serves blind and visually impaired people. And so they allowed me to sit here and do the webinar from here. So I just wanted to thank them.
Well, ESCN Fundraising Training would like to thank our friends in Vision in Wichita too. Okay, Sally, by the way, we decided we're not going to give you any easy questions. Okay, question number 1. You know, we've talked about there's more than 1.5 million nonprofits in the country, and it takes no surprise to surmise right now these are times of draconian It's one of my favorite fancy words. Financial pressures. There was a recent survey showing that 43% of nonprofits had to modify their operations extensively, but without having to eliminate positions, while nearly a third of the employers had to eliminate positions. So here is, this is a tough question. For most nonprofits where payrolls account roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of their total expenses, what is your advice for the leaders and the decision makers to approach the extremely difficult task of reducing staff expenditures?
Well, you just come right out of the gate, don't you, Jim? This
I know.
this answer, of course, and this topic could take the entire hour, but I promise I won't do that. It is difficult because most nonprofits have a family feeling. People care for each
Yeah.
other and really know each other. But now is the time for nonprofit leaders more than ever to be thinking as business leaders. So it has become more and more clear, right, that a nonprofit is a business, and that although a nonprofit isn't in existence to make money, they do actually need to make money to stay in existence. So to me, there's sort of maybe a 3 or 4 step process, if I might simplify it, when you're looking at the difficult task of reducing staff. Or making those budget cuts. So first, I just want to say first, a leader absolutely must acknowledge their emotions around this, because you've got to get past those to make good decisions. So there is anger and there is frustration and there is fear and there is disappointment. I had a client tell me yesterday, I feel like a failure, even though it had nothing, this has nothing to do with her. She hasn't been a failure. But we have to acknowledge those feelings to then be able to make good, clear decisions. So the second thing is to realize the best thing that you can do for your organization is to take that focused look down the road. Look 6 months, look 12 months, look 24 months. What is your vision? Has it had to change from what it might have been 3 months ago? Where are you going? How do you get there? And where in your organization are you getting the ROI that you need to get there? And so in many cases, that is going to mean cutting or reducing staff that isn't like core to that mission or bringing in that ROI. And then third, this is a new thought for some nonprofits, where could you bring in other income? So there are nonprofit models that don't rely as heavily on fundraising income, or they have at least other things they can rely on. So think of the Goodwill model, or frankly, right here where I am, Envision has an entire manufacturing and printing plant where they employ blind people. So it's in line with their mission, but it is a money-making operation that brings in other sources of revenue. So we do have to be really creative right now. And I would say that I get those are the main steps, and I would really encourage that creativity.
Okay, no easy questions, Sally. Do you think it's preferable to just eliminate specific staff positions or trim salaries and benefits across the board?
So that depends on the organization. Cuts across the board may work better in a smaller organization, because you might not have the bandwidth to cut a position and actually survive if you have a very few people to begin with. However, in larger organizations, it is almost always better to cut specific positions. Just knowing that if you think of it like in gardening, when you prune a plant or you prune a tree, and if you do it correctly, it can come back stronger and fuller and better. Whereas if instead you just cut water and food to that tree or that plant, it actually could die. So again, hard thought, hard discussion, but sometimes that is best for the organization to survive and thrive.
Sally, as I said, no easy questions. Okay. How is it going to be possible for nonprofits to retain high-performing staff, even if there has to be reductions in payroll and benefits?
You know, people work at nonprofits out of passion for the mission.
Mhm.
So many are making, let me back up. Many are making the mistake, or I've seen the mistake, that because I've cut positions, I now feel that I can't invest in the people that I have. So it seems like, well, I feel guilty if I told these people they can't work here, but now I'm going to take a few resources and invest in the people that I have. So I think that a couple things are happening with the passion that people have who work at nonprofits. Most understand that these cuts are necessary. And that's probably, first of all, not the best time to leave if you don't have to. But the bigger question is really, how do you make them feel valued, the people who are still there? So that extra support and care that I mentioned, that investment can be really important. Now that investment might be a time investment. Are you spending a little bit more time with your people, just listening to them or asking them, how could you reward them? There are really some cost-effective ways that you can reward people, like if they want more education. How about Jim Eskin's webinar? I mean, this is a free way that people can get educated. There are things out there like that. Other people are more interested, some of your employees are going to be more interested in doing something fun that helps sort of lighten the mood, and maybe they want to have a virtual lunch or something like that. And then there's also, I'm really finding right now that leaders need support and they need coaching. And sometimes the best investment they can make is in themselves or some of their senior leaders, in getting them a coach, and the return on that investment it's tenfold. So I would just kind of think through everywhere from time investment to free investment to small investments that are getting you a lot of return on that and helping people feel valued.
What do you think of the use of furloughs to save money?
Furloughs. Well, I have to say that for most nonprofits, I'm not a huge fan. Now, I can see it for universities. And actually, let me explain. I think most people know what furloughs are, but furloughs usually mean that you might get a 20% cut in your pay for a 20% cut in your time. So you might be working 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week, and then you get the corresponding pay cut. I actually think this works really well in large organizations where you're trying to keep your staff through a tough time. So a temporary furlough for a place like a university, a large university, might make sense. I think for most smaller nonprofits, they can't afford to do furloughs because they can't afford to have people's time cut. They need all hands on deck right now. So I don't really recommend it for the smaller places.
What do you think of the use of hiring consultants and/or contract employees to replace full-time positions?
I don't know about replacing full-time positions. I see really consultants and contract employees being most advantageous in three situations. One would be if you have a project that you're working to complete. So, for example, you have to revamp or get a new database, as an example. If you can hire a contract worker or a consultant who can focus 100% of their time on that project, they're not pulled away in committee meetings, they're not pulled away in most board meetings, things like that. That can be a really effective use of a contract worker or a consultant. Second time is when you need an interim leader. So right now, in most times, but especially right now, a nonprofit just cannot be without a leader. So if the leader is recruited away, if a leader steps away, if a leader retires, I think that having a consultant come in and be an interim leader is absolutely imperative. And then the third time is what I mentioned before, when you need advice or support, because having someone just there to do that for you, whether it's an hour every 2 weeks or whatever that is, can be a really, really valuable investment.
Hey, do you think it's realistic for nonprofits to consider volunteers to fill some of the gaps in staff reductions?
Depends on the gap, depends on the volunteer.
That's a great answer.
In most cases, no, but in some cases, yes. And I think that it just varies so much from nonprofit to nonprofit. There are people out there, though. If we think about right now, there are people who, there are retired people, there are people who maybe have lost a job and would like to volunteer, and they have amazing skills. So I certainly wouldn't count it out, but I'd be really careful with it.
Okay, you know I have a bias towards fundraising. That's where I spent the last 25 years of my career, and now that's how I'm consulting. Since fundraisers play such a crucial role in bringing in much needed revenues, can nonprofit leaders give preferential consideration to retaining fundraisers?
Can they or should they? I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, I know what I said. I'm going to put you more on the spot. I'm not going to say they sure they can. I'm going to give you should they, okay?
Okay.
Should they?
To me, this is again a question of who's going to get you where you need to go. How much money is that person bringing in? And is it the kind of money that you need now? So in some cases, you have maybe annual giving people who are bringing in unrestricted funds. And those, even though the funds or the dollars might be smaller and the ROI might be a little bit smaller in most cases, that money may be more important now than if you have a frontline major gift fundraiser who's working on a specialized project that may or may not be part of your vision at this time. I mean, it's all about what we talked about earlier. What's your vision now? Who can help you get there? You know, if the organization doesn't survive, then no one has a job and those services to the community are not there. So those hard decisions have to be made based on your vision, your strategy, and the ROI.
Good. Do you think it's realistic to set higher and more demanding expectations for the nonprofit staff that's actually retained?
Yes, I do, because the people who are working are blessed. Those of us who are working right now are blessed, and I think that working more diligently in a tough time is one way of showing gratitude and commitment. So yes, I do think it's realistic.
Okay, as I said, no easy questions. You know, working from home has become as common as anything in the world. And most organizations have seamlessly adopted very progressive work from home practices. So, put you on the spot. In which instances do you think employees should be allowed to continue to work from home? And in which instances should it be essential for them to return to their place of work?
Well, this is a good follow-up question to the last question, because it is about working hard and having, you know, a little bit higher expectations. Now, I told you at the very beginning, I'm a farmer's daughter, so I have to thank my dad for teaching me that hard work it's not only very important, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
Some jobs are hands-on, and those people where their jobs are really hands-on obviously need to be back in the office, the plant, wherever they're working as soon as it's safe. Or in a safe way. Regarding fundraisers specifically, which of course is one of the areas where we specialize, for those who are frontline fundraisers, there are ways to do their jobs for a while from behind a desk and behind a computer, but eventually they need to go back on the road, and they need to meet with donors face to face, and they need to bring people into their organizations, again, in ways that are social distancing, wearing masks. But relationships are built in person because that's how human beings are made.
Yeah.
I mean, our chemical makeup, our mirror neurons, our instincts, the way we read people, it just doesn't happen the same way over
And
a
I think
computer.
particularly when it comes to the capacity to share generous gifts. Okay, let's say about there is a lot of working from home. Okay, what's your best advice for supervisors to measure the productivity and output of their staff that no longer is right down the hall but working from home?
Absolutely. You're cutting out a bit, but I think I caught it. So measure is the operative word there. Are results coming in? And if results are not coming in, that's actually one of the places where we've been working a little bit in coaching with some of our clients. If results aren't coming in, then the first thing the leader needs to do is lead with empathy. In this time, ask questions. What are your challenges? What's going on at home? Are there kids there? Are you homeschooling? Is your spouse there? Do you have, is your cat walking across your keyboard? I mean, do we need to get some things, do we need to deal with some reality of situations? I mean, including people who are remodeling their houses. I mean, there's just so many things, happening. Focus and boundaries are two huge skills that people have to work from home, and both can be learned. I think every nonprofit actually and for-profit business with people working at home should invest in some education for their people to learn focus and boundaries and proactive communication. Those three things, that's time and money that will return a thousandfold, because that's what makes it doable to work from home.
Sally, you know this better than most people, that we've entered a phase in which employees are actually interviewed and evaluated completely on a virtual basis. Boy, is this something different. What are your recommendations on ensuring little or nothing is compromised if you have to do a virtual hiring process?
Okay, so Jim, I'm going to start by just saying this question gives me like heart palpitations and anxiety. Okay, so
I'm sorry I asked it.
No, it's absolutely important. So at Bryant Group, first of all, we have modified what we do. We do a lot of, we're all about being in person. So we've modified our process, different per client, but basically instead of seeing a candidate 2 or 3 times in person, we are now seeing them 1 time in person with the client, everyone with masks, everyone social distanced, and no one is required to go, not even the candidate. If they would rather do it by Zoom, that is absolutely an option. So let me just start there. All that being said, there is no way to ensure, so to answer your question, there is no way to ensure that nothing or little is compromised in a virtual hiring process.
It's probably the same way if I was to ask someone for $1 million. I don't care how good I am, probably doing it virtually, there's going to be compromise.
You've got it. And Jim, it is because of those nuances and all of the ways that we are literally chemically made up as human beings. We actually just, if I can give a quick example, we had a client where the CEO interviewed 4 semifinalists by Zoom, and very, very smart decision on his part. He said, I'm not going to cut anybody by Zoom. I want to see them, but I'm not going to cut anybody by Zoom. So as soon as his state opened up, they had in-person interviews, and his number 1 choice by Zoom became his number 4 out of 4 in person, because it is different.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, do you recommend that a nonprofit emphasize in its fundraising appeals that monies will be used to save staff?
No.
Okay.
No, people want to invest in a champion, and they want to invest in someone who can see a vision, even if it's a new vision, even if it's a pared down vision. But people do not want to invest in a place that sounds like it's dying.
Mm, mm, mm. Hey, when we finally get, fingers crossed, to the other side of this crisis, do you think we're going to see in advancement shops working from home a lot more commonplace than before COVID?
I do. Again, for people who have those boundary and focus and proactive communication skills. And frankly, I'm all for it on a limited basis. So people like me, I can get way more done at home than in an office environment because I'm super focused and I have good boundaries. However, if I'm a fundraiser, number one, I do need to be in the office or on site so I can be around our mission. I can be with the people we're serving, and I can be with my colleagues, my fellow employees, and what are they doing and how are they contributing and understanding the organization like that. I also obviously need to be with donors. All of that being said, I think that fundraisers could work from home 1, maybe 2 days a week and actually be more productive than going to the office every single day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. By the way, you're doing great on time. I love the pace of your answers, and we'll be getting to the audience in just a moment. But I want to go back again to those places where we'll see reduction in force. What are your recommendations on maintaining office morale where the staff has been reduced?
You know, I actually wrote this quote down because one of my clients said to me earlier this week, just because you have fewer Legos to work with doesn't mean you can't build what you want to build.
Can I steal that one? I love that quote.
Yes, isn't that beautiful? And you know, she said you can take them apart and you can put them back together in a little bit different way, and you can still build something, you know, really, really beautiful and fabulous. So what I recommend is number one, being transparent. So if you've had to make cuts, the people who are still there, they want to know, what is your plan? Is there even a chance that there may be more cuts? We need to know what's going on. When people are in fear, it's very difficult to be productive. So be transparent, help them see the new structure, help them see how you're putting the Legos back together again and how they're part of that and how that supports a new or revised vision. And I think that morale, you know, a couple things that are really good for morale. What decisions can you bring people into? People want to be part of the inner circle. They want to be in the know. And that helps them not only feel important and valued, but it helps their fear level go down. So I think that's super important for morale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hey, Sally, unlike political candidates, you've been absolutely perfect on the time. I never had to ring the bell or buzzer. John, and so we're great on schedule. John, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we do have one question so far.
Okay,
And
then you can do, but I want to explain the arrangement Sally and I made. If the question's easy, I answer it. If the question's more challenging, it goes to Sally. Okay.
Okay, well, Jeff asked, how will nonprofit fundraising change to adapt to our new reality of the pandemic, particularly those that depend on galas, luncheons, and event-driven events to raise dollars to meet financial needs?
I'll also join in. I'm going to let you go first, Sally.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were taking that one or if I was taking that one. And so I will say my upfront answer is I don't know. We have been hosting Zoom discussions among fundraisers throughout the country. And that is, of course, one of the biggest questions. I do think that people, I could be wrong, but I think that people are going to be hungry for social interaction, and that things like that could actually come back with a vengeance. once
Yeah.
everyone feels safe. The other thing I am hearing from universities is that alumni relations events actually will probably be a lot more hybrid. And so maybe that will actually expand to other events throughout other nonprofits as well, because it's a lot easier to jump on a book discussion once a week with your colleagues or other people that are interested in your nonprofit on the internet than it is, and people can be from all over the country, than it is to go somewhere.
Well, I have to admit, I'm going to bring a bias into my response. During my fundraising career, I was never a big fan of events. I realize if it's a long established tradition and you have volunteers pulling big oars, doing all the work, that's fine. But I didn't think they were the most efficient way to raise money, because typically about half the cost of the money you raise goes to cover the cost of the event. My suggestion to nonprofits who have relied on galas and dinners and luncheon, those people believe in you and your mission. You have relationships with them. So as long as we are in this rigid social distancing limitations, I would ask them for a virtual event gift, that they support the cause, but they don't have to put their tuxedo on and fancy gown and drive downtown. I would turn them for the support, but without the events. We have another question, John?
We do. We have a couple more. This is from Katie. Do you have any recommendations on resources to teach employees to focus at home?
That's Sally's.
I'll take it. Well, of course, I'm biased. I mean, that's one of the things that we teach, but we are certainly not the only option. There are many, there are many workshops, there are many consultants, and there's probably a whole lot of free online training. And those really are the three areas: focus, boundaries, because what I'm hearing from people who are, they're like, I don't know where my work ends and my home life starts now. My computer's always there. It's always open. So boundaries are important. And that proactive communication with your supervisor and your colleague, any information you can find on those three will be beneficial.
That's a great answer. John, do we have another question?
Yes. Al is asking, do you think there's a real place in fundraising for seniors? Full disclosure, I'm 78.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that your age is a number. We look at, I'm just thinking about like when we present candidates, and when we hear things like, well, this person's full of energy, this person's full of energy and has way more experience. I mean, one of the great things about being 78 is that you have 78 years of experience. I think that's very valuable.
Sally, I couldn't agree with you more. And I have the opinion, of course, I didn't always have gray hair, but you can act old and think old at 28, and you can act and behave, energetically and youthful at 78. So I agree with you. And age, particularly now, where we need the very, very best person at every position, age is, to me, not very relevant. Do we have, before we go to our summary, John, any other questions?
Jim?
No, that's it, Jim.
Jim?
Yeah, go ahead, Sally. We have time.
Could I do just 2 seconds on some advice because there are going to be a lot of people looking for jobs?
Please do. We have time.
First of all, I have a little bit of advice, and then we do have a free resource for anybody who's looking for a position at a nonprofit. We do something called the Third Thursday at 3, and at 3 p.m. Central on every third Thursday, we have an executive of our firm just gets on Zoom with anybody who wants to get on. We answer whatever questions you have. The people who are on Zoom actually can talk to each other and answer each other's questions. So it's just a discussion. And if you'd like to know more about that, Jim can give you my information. But I do have just really 2 quick pieces of advice. One is to get creative and brainstorm. this has to be looked at as an opportunity for you, because again, if you're in fear, you won't make good decisions. So you've got to get past the fear and say, what could I do? What do I want to do? And then I know you hear it all the time, but network, and then network with your network. So did you know that most people know 100 people well enough to invite them to their wedding or send them a Christmas card? So did you know that those 100 people that you know also know 100 people? You now have 10,000 people that you can network with, minus a few duplicates, that could help you in your job search. So expand your thinking, go to LinkedIn, see who you know, see who they know, and start talking to people.
Right. That's great advice. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try to summarize and provide some perspective, and I'm going to bring Sally in and out of the conversation. First of all, most people don't realize what a huge part of our economy the nonprofit sector is. Actually the third leading employer, and we have, how you count it, we started the year with over 12.5 million employees, okay? And that represents 826 billion in wages. And this is another reason I trust the profession. We now have nonprofit employees are 70% women. And I understand now that AFP's membership is kind of close. And I trust any organization run by women. And we have been growing dynamically. Our growth over that 10-year period was triple that of the for-profit sector. So we're a huge part of the economy. This will counter a misconception that actually we don't go into nonprofit work to get rich, because we go in for the passion. But the truth is that we have higher average wage in not all, but most fields. So, and also it's a proven fact that there is more job satisfaction. And as you see, nonprofit employees have 84% satisfaction versus 51% satisfaction for those in non-profit or for-profit jobs. And because it's the passion, because tell me, who else has the chance, particularly at a moment right like now, to touch, improve, and save lives? You know, I love my friends in the business and corporate sector, but we get a chance to do something to really make a difference. And again, there is a lot more trust in the nonprofit sector than in the for-profit sector. Gallup put it at 81%. So another thing is how we engage the population. For the nonprofit sector, there are about 12.5 million of us work in it, and we help, we have 63 million more people in our nonprofits. We just don't pay them. They're called board members, they're called volunteers. And so actually 25% of the adult population volunteers. And Sally, one of the interesting things, we're actually seeing that increase. It's going to be, of course, different type and very creative virtual volunteering, but we've seen volunteering rates and interests actually go up. Want to make a point here when it comes to making very, very difficult choices, that most of the nonprofits, I said there were 1.5 million, but most of the nonprofits that make up that 1.5 million are very modest. They are small to mid-size, and here you see the numbers. And actually, the great majority have budgets under $500,000. Okay, and here's sort of the harsh reality. Going into COVID-19, less than half of those nonprofits had 1 month of operating reserves and less than 6 months of cash to keep them running. So there was, as I started talking about stretching nickels, not into dimes but quarters, that was pre-COVID. And of course, we are feeling some bites because of COVID. During the period between March and May, about 13% of the nonprofit workforce was reduced. That was 1.6 million jobs. And to give you some perspective, that's close to 10% of roughly the 20 million jobs that were lost across all non-government fields. Here we're talking, you're going to be some difficult choices to make, because if you have to cut your budget right now in most nonprofits, salary and payroll and benefits account for 2/3 to 3/4 of total costs, it's going to be real tough to cut people. I like saying, Sally, you familiar with the movie Sophie's Choice? And that was starring, it's a little older, starring Meryl Streep back, I think, in the 1980s. And she had to make a choice over which of her children was going to survive. And so, as Sally has pointed out, you're going to have some very difficult decisions to make, and you should use it as an opportunity to think new and think creatively. And first, put your mission and vision in front of you. You know, where do you want to be in 6 months or 12 months or 2 years, and what positions will get you into achieving that vision? And one thing that we have an advantage in nonprofits, we, even before COVID, multitask. We juggle our responsibilities, and we're going to need that even more. I think it's not only pull your own oar, you're probably going to have to pull 2 oars. But Sally wanted to tell you, if you're one of those few that loses their jobs, and I got to tell you, even before this, if you worked in the advancement and fundraising field, I think it was your husband, Chris, said, you know, you really haven't proved yourself until you've lost your job at advancement. And you know, set your own vision. What do you really want to do next? It's a time that's kind of like a do-over, and be positive. And, you know, Sally was reminding us of that huge, huge net. What was it again? How many? If you knew 100 people, know 100 people?
That's 10,000 people, again, minus a few duplicates, but it really does open your eyes up to, you know, that there are a lot more people you can touch than you might think. And I do want to give something really positive, if I might, Jim. So
Please,
far, so if you have lost your job, so far we're seeing places that are hiring at, they're not reducing the salaries.
Give me a fist bump on that. Give me a fist bump on that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I don't know how, you know, I don't know if that will change, but so far the positions that we're recruiting for, the salaries are what they were before, or a little bit, you know, or even some places going a little bit higher. So that's good news so far.
Hey, I want everybody to type in the chat space, amen, amen. That is wonderful news. And right, in the nonprofit sector, I see it every week. There are jobs for hire, looking for good people, Robbie. And so just like a nonprofit, this is your opportunity to ask, how do you want to write the next chapter of your life? I know that a couple of years ago, I loved my career in higher education advancement, but always I wanted to do something of my own. And Andrea and I decided, okay, we can do that sooner rather than later. And we couldn't be happier about any decision. Guess what? Sally Bryant is a pretty smart person, but even she can't tell you the future. And the reality is, we now live in a world in which there is so much more we don't know than we do know. So just focus on that, what you do know. And I'm going to quickly wrap up, and we're doing great on schedule here, Sally. My advice to your nonprofits is, do not let your foot off the gas pedal. You should continue, not to continue, even communicate with donors more than you had been before. You should consider, you should continue your solicitations. You should continue your cultivation and engagement. You should continue your stewardship. All the needs that you haven't served haven't gone away. I have a suspicion they've escalated. So keep on what you're doing to raise money. Now, I like saying that we've entered a new frontier for fundraising, that I don't know how much it's going to change going into the future, going back once we get to the other side of the pandemic. But I think that advances we've made in embracing technology aren't going to go away. I like calling it fundraising's new frontier. And by the way, I've been, I ran 3 fundraising shops, and a typical fundraising boss, Sally, when you see Jim at his desk, say, what are you doing here? I want you out with the donor. And if you can't be with the donor in person, then I want you to be on the phone or virtual with them. And I tell you, one of the tips we have, our donors tend to be older, okay? That if they're not familiar with video conferencing technology, this is a great opportunity to deepen your relationship. Teach them. That will strengthen the communication between you and your nonprofit with them, and it will improve the quality of their lives. It just takes a little hand-holding to learn how to use these. And we're learning. As Sally said, it's tough to raise money, but I had a guest on a week ago saying he's seen $1 million gifts from major gift donors because, again, they realize, by the way, as tough as things are, and they are, the #1 predictor of philanthropy is the stock market, and it has held up remarkably well. And so people who have the resources and we're in position to be your major gift donors still can. And I would advise you, as long as you still have social distance requirements, continue to cultivate them. And guess what? Ask, ask them. And we really are seeing, this is almost counterintuitive, but we are seeing $1 million gifts done through virtual solicitation. The nonprofit, this is a time you have to really dip deep down and consider what is it you are all about, and what are those core elements that drive your mission. Focus on that. And you shouldn't be afraid if your needs are escalating, is to say, turn to your friends. And you need them. Just like during a capital campaign, there is a sense of urgency, not desperation, but urgency, that you maintain your mission in helping touch, improve, and save lives. And the whole point is, we have a big crisis on our hand, and we need our nonprofit community to play a major role in having some impact. And that's what you all can provide. And I want to sum up, Sally, one of the things that you can do virtually and in person, treat your donors like family. Every day we're probably calling loved ones, and if they're in different cities or states, how are you doing? What are conditions like there? You update them on what you're doing. That's what families doing. I've never talked to my siblings as much as during this period. Maybe that's too bad, but you realize what's really important in your life. And I think that's advice for nonprofits, and that is treat your donors just like your family. Tell them how you're doing. Tell them how the nonprofit's doing. Find out how they're doing, and find out if there's any way that you can help them. Because we are finding out that virtual hugs can be effective, not as effective. But Sally, we have an advantage. People are home. We have a captive audience. And probably if you are restricted to virtual communication, I would step it up. I would be calling them by phone or by video conference and checking in even more often. I wanted to quote a good friend of ours, Norma, and she keeps on reminding us that nothing lasts forever. And guess what? This is not going to last forever. You're familiar, Sally, with Giving USA. We had its editor on about a month ago, Melissa Brown. Everyone see it, I'm circling. And she was reporting that actually philanthropy is responding more robustly to the pandemic than it did to the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. There's still a lot of money out there. And by the way, too, the name of the game is individuals. Now, don't get me wrong. I love foundations. I love corporations. But as you see here, 68% of America's $450 billion of philanthropy came from individuals. When you add the 9% that's bequests and that's individuals that just passed on. And when you ask the part, it's half of foundations or family endowment foundations. That's 88%. So as you're reaching out to your prospects, again, corporations and foundations are great, but your strategy should continue to emphasize getting from individuals, because that's where the fish is biting. And we like to say in your nonprofit, I don't care if you're the CEO, I don't care if you're the director of first impressions or the receptionist, the director of development, the program director, if you're a board member, if you're a volunteer, you can do something. And nonprofits needed you before this pandemic, and you are going to be an essential part of us getting through this pandemic. I think, Sally, you emphasize, for those of us, believe me, the news, it is what it is. And to the extent that you can be a beacon of light, do that. If something, you get a great gift, or, you know, you get a, some of your stakeholders are helping in a way that surprises you, spotlight those positive stories. We always can use those positive stories. And Sally, we like to close on this. Philanthropy and fundraising really isn't complicated. We have to inspire donors what their gifts will do. You have needs. The needs have not gone away. Continue to inspire your donors about what their gifts will do. And I like to close with a line from the poet Maya Angelou, who said, people will remember what you said, they will not remember what you did, but they will never, never forget how you made them feel. And that's our challenge, to make our donors feel like the most important people in the world. Finally, a money-back guarantee, Sally. The more you ask for the gift, the more money you're going to get. I guarantee it, okay? Guarantee it. I want to thank our producer, John Largent, who's CEO of Game Day Media, and to Sally Bryant, who knows more about recruitment and hiring and team building than anybody I know, and knows how to say it so succinctly and so clearly. Thank you. You kept to right to the minute of this. So thank you, Sally, and may the Bryant family remain healthy. And thank you for your leadership to the nonprofit sector.
Thank you, Jim.
At that, and it's been a pleasure. So we'll be posting a quick summary of the major points, and then John Largent does his magic act, and we put together a recording and tape that we will send not just everyone who listened, but everybody who registered. And we're also going to post that recording and slides on LinkedIn and Facebook. So everybody stay safe. And again, thank you for everything you do to make this world better through your engagement in nonprofits. And we'll see you next week. Good night.
Thanks, Jim.